Welcome everyone to another episode of Small Town Black Man Let's Talk. We are really excited that you have taken your time this evening to spend with us. We have two young people tonight. Due to the COVID concerns, we don't have a full panel. And I would like to publicly thank Sophia Rickman and Damian Rose for being willing to participate in this panel originally, and unfortunately narrowed down to two tonight, which we're very thankful for our panelists here tonight. We have young people sharing tonight. Mr. Pazzi was very interested in hearing the young people's perspective in our subject matter that we've been talking about, and I'm also very excited to have these young men here to share with you. As we typically do, I'd like to share a quote from Benjamin Watson's book, Under Our Skin, and he says, quote, "The solution to the problem of race in America will be found only by ordinary people, quote, good, end quote, people, looking inside themselves, being honest about the assumptions and biases that have formed, and beginning to change what's in their hearts," end quote. Just a reminder, you may call in with questions or comment on our Facebook Live. The phone number is 825-3245 if you have questions for our panelists tonight. At this time, I'd like to introduce Jay Gaddis.
I'm Jay Gaddis. I'm recently graduated from high school. I'm currently employed as an administrative assistant at the Economic Development Group. I've been at that for about a year now, a little over a year. My aspirations, I'm going to college for general studies, but I'm going to be honest, past that, I can't really tell you what I want to do, and I wish I knew. I wish I could tell you, but I am going to college for a bachelor's or an associate's, whichever one is the better option for general studies, and I'm hoping that by the end of that, I'll have a better idea of what I want to do. I hope.
Yeah.
But I've lived in Connersville for 18 years. I'm 18. I've lived in the same house for 18 years. But I'm excited to be here. I thank Emma for inviting me. I really do. I'm excited.
Okay.
All right. I'm Laterrian Harrison. I recently graduated in the same class that Jay is in. I recently got hired in at Walmart. I run track and field and cross country. I also plan to attend college. I'm going to Goshen University up north, and where I can study broadcast journalism. So I'm going to be double majoring because I want to be a news anchor. So, yeah. I wasn't born in Connersville. I was actually born in Virginia, so that was a little bit different. And yeah, I also thank Emma for inviting me on here. I definitely want to be here. So yeah.
All right, well, would you like to start by sharing a little bit about how you grew up and some positive and negative experiences that you've had in your life?
Sure. So, to be honest with you, a lot of people might say that my childhood was very weird or different or abnormal from theirs. So, my mother, I guess you could say she ran away from home to Virginia to be with a man, and then that man would be my father. Unfortunately, things didn't work out with them, and she came back home, and that left her as a single mother. And so, yeah. That also put me as a biracial kid in a fully white family that have never had to really deal with a person of color in their family. Of course, they had friends and stuff like that, but they've never had one that they call their own. So that definitely put me in a different position. But they knew that discrimination and stuff like vicious people were out there. So they did their best to try and prep me for that. So throughout my childhood, they did what they call like black jokes and stuff like that to kind of like, not that it kind of desensitized me, so it didn't hurt as bad, because they didn't want discrimination and racism in the world to define me. They kind of wanted me to be able to be like, okay, you said that, but I'm not going to let it hurt me or stop me from doing something and being successful. So throughout my whole childhood, they would make black jokes, stuff like that. A lot of people looking through might be like, oh my, his family's kind of racist to him or something like that, but it was never like that. And a lot of people might have saw it as that, but I didn't even see it as that. I saw it as my family was trying to prep me for the real world because, as everybody knows, that the real world can get pretty ugly at times. But other than that, that was how I was raised. I was raised on the farm, so that was also different. But that also put me into a whole nother problem of entering the world of not discrimination from one side. So a lot of people think that black people are only discriminated by white people, but I also experienced not only discrimination from white people, but also black people, since I'm biracial. And so that almost makes me feel like I don't belong in anywhere, not either side, and I'm kind of in this gray area. Because I did wear boots, I did wear a cowboy hat, I rode horses, I took care of farm animals, I worked in the fields, all that kind of jazz. So a lot of black people looking at me would call me whitewashed or very mean names just because I wasn't wearing Jordans and stuff like that. But the same way white people also looked at me and was like, you're not made to wear boots and kind of stuff like that. So like there was a lot of things that kind of like, which made me struggle to find out who I was because everybody was constantly pounding me and meaning you don't belong here, but you also don't belong there. So I really struggled to kind of find where I actually fit in. Yeah, it was pretty rough, but like I said, my family saying all those jokes and making me feel as incorporated as possible. Like they never forced anything. They never said you have to wear cowboy boots, you have to work with the tractor, you have to work with the animals. They just gave me an option. And I took that option because I found it fascinating and I loved it. So even though people would narc at me for wearing cowboy boots and stuff, I didn't let it affect me because I liked wearing cowboy boots. I liked riding horses. I liked doing all of that. So yeah, I can say that I experienced discrimination on both sides. That kind of makes me feel like I don't belong anywhere. So yeah.
Do you feel like one particular group, when it comes to the gray area, reached out to you more than another?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I feel more welcomed, and I don't know if it's just because of the way I was raised, but to me, I feel more welcomed by white people, I would say. Because I lived in Connersville for most of my life, Connersville and Rushville. Both of those communities made me feel welcomed, even though I was very different. I can say that through having discrimination throughout my whole life, I'll say that elementary school was where I experienced it the most, which is weird, right? Because we're so young at that point. But I can remember being in kindergarten and riding the school bus and a sixth grader calling me a burnt cookie and trying to, he was saying mean things to me and getting me to the front. I can remember that, and that was in elementary school. So that kind of really opened my eyes up. Of course, I went home and cried because I didn't understand why this kid never knew me and called me a burnt cookie. But it wasn't until middle school that I actually experienced like the N-word being tossed around to me. And it wouldn't even be by kids of my class. It was by adults and stuff like that.
Wow,
so
really?
yeah. But I can't say, when I got to high school, I really found my groove, and I never really experienced, like, I guess you can say discrimination, because everybody just accepted me for who I was. I was just LT to them. It wasn't that I was biracial. I wasn't black or white. I was just LT, their friend, their peer, a classmate to them, anything you can think of. I never really felt unwelcomed at the high school, to be honest, by anybody, no student or teacher. So that's all I have to say about that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's good to know. I wanted to ask you about how you feel your grandparents and how you were raised have modeled for you or helped instill this confidence that you have that has really helped overcome the barriers you're talking about that could have crushed other people.
Right. My grandparents and my mother were always trying to remind me that it's not about what I look like on the outside. It's not about my skin color or anything like that. It's about what's on the inside. So my values, my morals, and just my overall name. I came to like just because it's an old family, and like my grandparents have always taught me that when you have nothing, nobody can take your name from you, and that's the one thing that you can always have. So they kind of instilled that inside of me, and I was like, okay, so it might not matter what I look like on the outside, but I can definitely build my name. And so that became my drive and motivation and gave me confidence, is that no matter what these people say, I have my name and I can build it, and people will always look at my name and know who and what I stood for. So that was what really helped me.
I appreciate you sharing and speaking to the fact that you've had negative experiences from both sides of the fence, so to speak, because I think, with the social vibe that is going on right now, everything tends to be focused on white on black discrimination, not so much talking about, folks who've experienced it from the opposite people, so.
I can definitely say, I can give a story even to the present. So when I referred to being, somebody calling me whitewashed, I actually going with my girlfriend into a town in Ohio to, I think it was Ohio, but that's not important. We were going prom dress shopping to get her a prom dress, and it just so happened that this town was very populated with black people. It was a bigger town, bigger city, and I went, and on my way in, I was wearing what you would consider a golfing outfit. So I had a nice polo, white shorts on, nice shoes, and I had my golfing hat on, which is a wide brim hat. Anybody knows that I wear that all the time. But I was just walking into the store with my girlfriend and her grandmother, and a group of black guys came out, and they said, "Nah, he's not our brother. He's whitewashed," and continually gave me mean looks until they got into their car and I walked into the mall. So that was a very oh wow, they don't even know me, but they're already sitting here and discriminating against me just like white people do sometimes. That was definitely a game changer. And then I recently decided to get my ears pierced, which I had wanted to do forever, but I just never had the gut to. And so I finally got the gut to do it, and I got my ears pierced. But I also noticed that people started to discriminate against me because of my earrings.
Really?
Yeah, they were even though I was still LT and I just have earrings in, they were like, "Oh, you're a real light skin now," and said terms like that, where I was like, why is there a need to say that? They're just earrings. I don't think that classifies me as being more black or anything like that, but I still experience that kind of stuff. And I never would have thought just getting my ears pierced would cause that to happen. So that was definitely a game changer as well.
That's interesting, connecting the earrings. Yeah. I know that there's been some situations, even with my own boys, where I felt like they weren't black enough.
Right.
Can you speak to that at all?
I definitely can, coming from the background where I wear cowboy boots and a cowboy hat. There were times where I would wear that, and I definitely would go into a setting of just with several black people, and I would feel like I'm not black enough, or I wasn't black enough or dressed appropriately to be around, or I also felt like I was being judged just because I was wearing cowboy boots, which I never saw as a big deal, because to me they're just an article of clothing. You wear shoes the same as I wear boots. Right. But to a lot of people it means something more than just clothing and putting shoes on your feet. So I noticed that a lot when I would wear jeans and boots and a nice long sleeve button up. So yeah, I definitely can agree that sometimes I felt like I wasn't black enough. But I can't say that I've never felt like I wasn't white enough, because I don't know what that feels like or not. But I do know the feeling of not being black enough. So
I'm happy that you spoke to that. That's not been shared in a panel, and I think that's happening. So we need to give voice to that. I was curious if either of you have ever felt that you were being viewed as dangerous by any people at all. Just being, if you identify even somewhat with being a black male, if you felt that people viewed you as dangerous.
I don't know if it's so much I've been viewed as dangerous as much as it's, for me personally, not as trustworthy.
Okay.
And I mean, I can't say specifically that this is the reason why they think I'm untrustworthy, or this is the reason why they think I'm da-da-da-da-da, but I've noticed, and it's the small things, having others do a certain thing in your house and then having, say, me do something differently, or inviting somebody else and I'm not saying like going out and doing things, but like inviting other people to do a certain social task, let's say, and not so much me, because I'm different or whatever you want to say.
Okay.
But yeah, dangerous. I wouldn't say dangerous, but untrusted is more.
That's
my
powerful
range.
too. That has powerful ramifications and effects on you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's good. That's not good, but
Yeah,
good
I
that you
understand
shared
what you're
that. I
saying.
appreciate that. What about you?
Well, like anybody who knows me, if I see a person struggling on the side of the road, or somebody who looks like they're struggling to get their groceries into their car, or they're struggling, like up at the high school, there's this old man who was struggling because his lawnmower died and he was pushing it uphill. I parked my truck on the side of the road and I helped him push it all the way back to his house. I love helping people. And I can't say around here in Connorsville that I've ever felt like somebody saw me as dangerous or saw me as untrustworthy. But then again, this is a small town and people know my face at least.
Sure.
So like a lot of people just accept my help just as anything else. But I can say when I take like, I guess you would consider that like a small town action, right? Those kind of small town actions, you know, helping people and that kind of stuff. When I take that kind of attitude and I go into a bigger city such as Indy, and I try and do that, I do notice that a lot of people are more sketched out by it. And I can't say that it's because they know that I'm half black or they know that I'm untrustworthy or what it is, but I can tell you that maybe it's just because I say, hey, ma'am, and I'm coming out of the blue and I say, hey, ma'am, can I help you put these groceries into your cart? They tend to be more sketched out about it and are like, no, I'm fine. And it hurts, but at the same time, I have to understand that the world's changed a lot and that it is pretty dangerous. You don't know what a stranger may do
Sure.
and stuff. So I can't say that it's because of my skin color that people see me as dangerous, but I can say that I've experienced it.
Which is unfortunate. I wanted to ask you a little bit about school, the school setting, and if you've seen particular people treated differently than others, how that was handled. Would you like to speak to that?
I think it's hard to speak on, for our class at least, harder because I started sophomore year, but in my 3 years of being there, definitely the majority was white folk. I didn't see very many people of color. I can probably think of maybe 15, maybe. Would you
That's
say
a
that?
high number.
I was going to say, I was thinking more around the realms of like maybe 5 to 8 people
Really?
of color at our school.
Yeah, it's not very many,
It's
but
not much at all.
what I was gonna say about that is it's so hard to monitor the difference of interactions between white people and colored people during that setting because really all you see is white people and you don't see any colored people except for maybe a few instances passing by, going to different classes and everything, but you don't see the social setting.
Okay.
And I'll add on to that, the ratio of like colored to white people at our school is very minuscule. And I mean, that's nobody to blame, right? That's just,
Sure.
it's just what we're given. So I get, and like Jay said, it is very hard to monitor the 8 people that are at our school and their experiences. But I can speak on my own that once I finally got the groove at the high school and made my name, like I said, I build my name so that people know that I'm a trustworthy person and what I stood for, that I never really experienced any discrimination and anything like that. People just saw me as LT, their buddy, their best friend, somebody that they could go to for help. Like nobody ever saw me because I was black or treated me different because I was a different skin color. So.
And I really feel like there's power in what you're saying as far as your character, your integrity, your behavior, the way that you operate, handle yourself is key to establishing changes in thinking.
Right.
If some have ideas and biases, that's the power to change those other mindsets is by being a person of integrity and caring for other people and just, making sure you're a person of respect and respectable. So I appreciate all of that. Do either one of you want to speak to your personal thoughts and opinions just kind of about the social environment that we have in America right now, what's going on, what you think?
Yeah, I'd like to add one more thing about the school. Like me and Jay, we aren't all powerful beings at school, but I would consider ourselves influencers, right? Because we were in the media part of school. But I can't, and we started a lot of things, whether they were goofy or not, but I have to say that the best thing that we started was this thing where we showed me and Jay's friendship. And it was find your LT and find your J. And I think that was a big thing at the school for a while, where people were trying to find who's their best friend that they care about and who cares for them. And I think that kind of brought the school together. And it wasn't about like a collar thing or what. It was just who really cares for you and who do you really care for.
I love that.
I would say
It was a silly thing that kind of took more meaning to it than
we thought.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, but it definitely turned out to be a really good thing.
Yeah.
So,
Sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
And fun.
Yeah, it was fun. We definitely enjoyed it.
Good. So back to America. What are your thoughts about what's going on?
My heart goes out to not only black people, but everybody, small business owners, police officers, the residents that have to deal with it, just all of it. And I know living here, we don't see it. We see it on TV and everything, but trying to take a step back for a minute and put ourselves in the shoes of people in LA or big cities like New York, Orlando, places like that where there are riots happening, and just kind of thinking, yes, Black lives matter. Obviously, all lives matter. White people, black people, Hispanic people. I don't want to deteriorate that meeting in any way. But what's the point to where it's for racial equality and just because I can, But that's what I think about it.
And to speak to your integrity and you as a person, you respect all people.
Right.
So you would come at those ideas with that because you do it. And you're doing it well. So I appreciate that about you.
Thank you.
What about you?
Like Jay said, we do have to draw a line where it becomes we're doing it because we can. I think there's actually 3 different sections. We're doing it because we can. There's actually a malicious and vicious intent with it of like maybe being superior, and then racial equality. I feel like there's 3 different types of people that are giving fuel to the Black Lives Matter movement. And I think that we have to find that line and draw it. But like me, I would call myself colorblind, because when I look at a person, my first thing isn't, oh gosh, he's of a person of color, oh gosh, he's white. My first thing is the way they greet me, the way they smile, the way they shake my hand or hug, however we greet each other, and their first few words, their first few sentences to me is what I definitely build off. That's my first intent. But there's a lot of people out there that judge a person right off the bat just on the way they're dressed, what they are listening to at the time, maybe music, they're listening to music, or the way they look. And I can't say that I've ever done that, because I always think there's more to it, right? Because there is more to it than a person's look or outfit. So yeah, I do think that there's a problem. And like I said, there's a lot of bad people in this world, but we can't let the bad apples kind of infect and give all good apples a bad rep is our biggest thing. And I think that so many people are so quick to point fingers and to blame another person instead of take time and reflect on themselves and look for personal improvement, because everybody has a little bit room to improve. Right. And if everybody improves a little, everybody will get better, right? And so I feel like instead of pointing fingers, everybody's so quick to point fingers, but nobody's so quick to get a solution. Just to point the blame and then act out irrationally. And I feel like, yes, we can't get a solution that fast, and everything takes time, but we also have to have patience and effort and investment into getting to a better place. Because I feel like everybody wants this right here, the way they want it right there and now, but nobody wants to take the effort or put the time that they need to get where they want to be. And that's just unrealistic. And so I feel like a lot of people need a reality check on how we fix things. So that's how I feel about it.
I think to piggyback about what you said about investment, that's a good word, because until people from all people groups decide that each one of us is worth the investment,
Right.
worth the relationship and the respect that we all deserve, then this thing's not going to get fixed or change.
No.
And that's powerful. Investment, that's fantastic, that word, because that's what it takes. Each one of us to see other people as not only investments themselves, but even of ourselves into them, into each other. So I love that. That's very good.
Another thing that I think that it'll take is a lot of people are scared of change, and I completely understand that. We all like our normal, cozy little house, and if somebody wanted to change what we were doing that day, we're built on schedules, right? We get up in the morning, we brush our teeth, we take a shower, we get ready for work, we get ready for school, we go through our day, we come home, we eat dinner, take a shower, maybe play a little bit, and then we go to bed, and it's the same thing. And so when you change that, it causes panic, right? And I think that everybody needs to find the willingness to adapt and the willingness to accept change, because change is inevitable. Change will always happen no matter what, but we need to be willing to accept it. And to be quite fair, change is a good thing.
It
usually.
is.
And change makes progression and helps us keep moving forward. And usually when we become stagnant and we don't change is when things start to move backwards. And
Yeah.
we don't ever want to move backwards, we want to move forward. So I think our big thing is finding the will to adapt and finding our way of accepting change.
Also, our way of saying, where can I do better?
Yes.
Where do I need to challenge my thought process, how I think? Where am I holding thoughts and stereotypes and biases and prejudices that aren't factual? And if people are really honest, no matter what you look like, people have those.
Yeah.
And may have lots of those. And they may be all lies. So I like that what you said too about progression. It's not just one group of people that needs to change. It's everybody looking within and saying, where do I need to do better? How can I approach this person in a way that brings us into fellowship or brings us into relationship, because I can tell that I have something to bring them or they have something to teach me. So
And building off of change and everything, I think a lot of people get caught up on when they want change or they want to experience change. Everybody wants that immediate satisfaction, right? If they want change, they want it right then, right there. But they're not willing to go through the process of what it takes to change. And kind of going against that too, when people go through the process and they don't see any change, they want to give up. But it's perseverance that makes the change. You're not going to get immediate satisfaction. You're not going to change everybody. But if you can change some people, and those people can change some people, and those people can change some people, that's when I think the impact starts to
you're right.
begin.
And the circle of influence. If we realize that without even being cognizant of it, we are passing our biases, our prejudices on to those we influence, and we all influence somebody or lots of somebodies, and that's a little scary. But it's also very impactful to see how we can also change in a positive way. And one example that I shared with somebody was, I'll never forget when my husband and I first bought our house on Grand Avenue. It was back around the election. I think it was Al Gore and George Bush. I could have that wrong. But anyway, they were throwing bricks. You guys are probably too young to remember that. But there was group of people that were throwing these big rocks and bricks into car windows. Well, we had just moved in there, and they hit our car, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is the welcome to the neighborhood. Well, I didn't know they were doing it all over town.
Right.
Obviously, it was late. It was like 11 o'clock. That politic crap was on TV, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be my life, right? And come to find out later, that was not the case. But my husband and I have chosen to integrate ourselves and build relationships with our wonderful neighbors. We could have just as easily, based on that first experience, not talk to anybody else. We could have chosen to shut our door, be private, not speak, because I could have chosen to let that event, which I took personally, and it wasn't, to determine how I viewed my neighbors. And I think that's easily done. Often we think we know what other people think, and we don't. And then, therefore, think like I think, you think whatever. I just don't have a relationship with you or don't give you the time of day. Well, it's foolishness, right? So I could have easily missed out on really wonderful connections, not only for me, but for my sons, for our family. And by choosing relationship, which, sometimes you don't have time. Sometimes you don't want to talk to your neighbor. You want to rush in the house because you're busy. But the relationship matters. The people matter. And I feel like we're better for that.
Right. Definitely, like you were talking about change in the progression, and you referred to, it's the self-check. What can we do? What can I do? And I definitely think that self-check will start that wave of change. Everybody puts their hand in the water at the same time, and it looks like it's a little thing, but over time it becomes a bigger and bigger wave. It's also not only taking that self-check, but when we have a difference, it's how you address the difference. A lot of people are so quickly to point a finger and say, you did this, and this is why I'm mad, but we need to... And it always puts everybody on the defense. And when somebody's on the defense and somebody's on the offense, you get nowhere. You're just fighting each other. And when you come into a discussion or a difference, and I'm like, well, I'm just going to lay everything on the table, and I'm going to say, this is why I'm unhappy. This is what's making me feel. And you put everything back onto you instead of pointing your fingers at the other person. That person's more willing to hear and listen and maybe even change afterwards because they didn't feel like you were attacking them or had a problem with them, and they didn't have to go on the defense. So I think not only do we need to learn our self-checks and how we improve individually, but how we also address differences to other people and how we can kind of stop going on offense and defense like it's a
power struggle.
Yeah, power struggle, and just we're on the same level. Here's where I am. Here's where you are, and just talk about it instead of trying to come down on somebody else or work your way up. You're on the same level, and you just need to talk about how you address people as well.
And I think what's key to what you're talking about is caring about the relationship. That other person has to matter to you for you to choose that outlook.
Right.
And not everybody, I think a lot of people like pointing fingers. I think it makes them feel powerful, and I think they neglect the thought that this is not getting us anywhere.
Right.
It seems to be pretty popular right now. But it's so encouraging, isn't it, to hear these young people speak and share and have such wisdom. I know it's particularly a blessing to me. So what else would you like to share about that?
Just kind of going off of what LT said, self-checks are important too, but I think more importantly than self-check, it would be accountability too. Having somebody to help you with accountability. Say, we all have different beliefs.
Yeah.
And if you don't let me know what your belief is, say you don't want shoes in your house, and I walk in and I leave my shoes on. You never told me any differently, so I don't think I'm doing anything wrong.
Right.
So it takes you to tell me, hey, this is the way I feel, this is the way what we do. If you can, if we can try to find a middle ground or something like that, I think that'll that'll help.
Say that again.
But and like you said, pointing fingers makes everybody more powerful. And I think that everybody is kind of like, I don't know if I want to say brainwashed or raised, but a lot of people feel as if the world is a dog-eat-dog world. Like it's, you got to fight to the top or you're never going to make it. But it's really not that in reality. And that if everybody knows, wolves, they're in packs, right? And so when you become into this big group, you work better, you become more successful. So it's not all about being on your own and being this lone survivor, but finding people have mutual feelings and ideas and ideologies and working with them, but also collaborating with people who have clashing ideologies so that you guys can reach a middle ground and never ever have to fight or be aggressive towards each other, but finding a middle ground so you guys can kind of live together, even though you might not think the same, and I might like pizza and you might like salads, but we're not going to fight every day about it. You can eat your salad and I'll eat my pizza, and we can eat it at the same dinner table. I think that's kind of the ideology that everybody has to kind of accept.
Yes.
It's okay to be different, and differences in people promote individuality, and that's a necessity because not everybody's the same.
Right, and I think too, going along with that, there's a lot of people, and I know me, I was like this too. They have beliefs and opinions, but they're so scared to share them with anybody because they feel like they're the only one that has that opinion or feels that way. But in a world with approaching 8 billion in population, I promise you there's at least one other person that feels the same way you do. And if you speak out, then maybe even more people will.
Right, and like you said, a lot of people might feel as their ideology is very, very minuscule or taboo even, like, oh, I live in this kind of town where this is the set ideology, but I believe this. I'm sure there's people in that town that have the same ideology, they're just with you and they're in the dark because they're scared to share it, but a lot of people will accept your difference. I think that it's your approach is what makes people reject your difference. It's not that you like salad, it's how you approached me about your salad, saying that I had to stop eating pizza because you like salad. And that's kind of what I think is the problem. It's not that there's differences in the world, it's everybody's approach with their difference, is that my difference is the correct. Right. And there's not one single correct way to do things. Like life is like math, several different ways to get to the same solution. And a lot of people don't think that way. They think that there's only one way because it worked for me, but there's also other ways that have worked for other people and you got to the same place. And a lot of people don't accept that. And that's where becoming accepting of individuality and not being a cookie cutter is really important.
And that's so key, too, to be the individual within your people group. You know, what's what you've spoken to that you've found in your own life, that you can be yourself and not necessarily match outwardly everybody else in this people group. We had a question, and I think I have this correct. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. What can you do personally, both of you, to make changes in Connersville?
So I have reflected on that many nights. So that is a good question because I always want to be a influencer in any field that I am in, whether that's on the track. That's why I wanted to become team captain, is because I could influence. If I got into a position like that, I could influence better. Whether it's in school. So the way I thought about it was, how can I change in Connersville or help people change in Connersville, is just by my approach. So I started getting into I guess planting, I guess you would say, your roots into Connersville. So like making a strong foundation so I could build up and branch off. So like that was when I asked Chad Frank if I could intern under him for mayor, or like because he's mayor and I wanted to have that. And I worked at TV3. I also did everything I could when it came to community service, that kind of stuff, just because if you become a familiar face, people are more willing, and not only more willing, but more comfortable and accepting of you, and they're more willing to hear you out. So my biggest thing is to become a familiar face and just make your standpoint known, but also make sure that your approach isn't too aggressive.
Very good.
So.
Yeah, I would agree. you can't be aggressive with your approach. If I say, I'm right and you're wrong, you're going to be way less apt to listen to me than if I said, this is why it worked for me, maybe this is why it'll work for you. And then change in Connorsville is, I think that's a good goal to set, is a change in Connorsville, because we're a smaller community, but the small communities, once you change one small community and another small community changes, that turns into a county, which turns into an area, which turns into a state, which could hopefully turn into the world. But personally, I mean, just to go out there, like LT said, kind of get yourself known a little bit. Everybody's more comfortable if they know you. And believe it or not, even if you don't, you still have influence over the people that you know and the people that you trust and the people that trust you. Even just social media. We live in the age of social media and everything.
Very true.
Going on there and expressing your beliefs. Not everybody is going to be in line with what you believe, and that's okay.
Right.
As long as you can get it out there and say, this is what I believe, I'm almost certain that somebody else is going to agree and say, I believe that way too. Maybe we can make a change.
I definitely agree with you. And a unrealistic thing is to have everybody like you, because it doesn't matter. You could be doing everything right, being perfect, making sure that everybody's okay, and there will still be somebody who doesn't like you, whether it's that they envy you, that jealousy fuels their decision not to like you. You're going to have somebody who doesn't like you. But you can't let that person who doesn't like you stop you from making a change. That's the biggest thing, is that, and it's not unrealistic to try and have everybody like you, but to actually obtain that is unrealistic. So yeah, there might be a few people that don't like you, but that you can kind of take that self-check and be like, okay, what can I be doing wrong to have this person not like me? And maybe even engage with a conversation, ask them, what am I doing wrong that is making you dislike me? Or vice versa, anything. And just, I guess the biggest thing is to have open arms and open ears to listen and not kind of disclose yourself from anybody. Because you can always learn from somebody, no matter the age or their experience in somewhere. Somebody always can offer something to you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
What kind of things specifically do you think that would be ideal to work on for our community? That could be very vague.
Okay, so I've already noticed a very big change in the community as it is with the COVID and the big storm that already rolled in. Mm-hmm. I've noticed a lot more closely knit community relationships. People are more willing to help, whereas before the COVID and before this storm, I really never saw anybody in the community really interact with each other. It was more like, hey, you see somebody in the grocery store, you say hi, you talk to the clerk, whatever it may be. But like with the storm and COVID, it seemed like a lot of more people were willing to do volunteer work, to help people who might not have the same resources as you, but you put the resources out there for them. Whether that is you have a pickup truck and you'll take the wood away, or you have a chainsaw and you'll cut the tree up, or maybe you have masks and they can't afford them. You give them some masks and gloves or cleaning supplies. I just seen that Connorsville itself was more willing to help each other, and that was the closest I've ever seen the community in my 18 years of being around.
Love that.
I'll agree with that. We're a pretty close community as is, and I think that's a big thing too. Is there's a lot of people that just bash our community, but they have no idea what we really have.
Right.
If they and I think it's more of a everybody else bashes it, so I have to bash it too.
Right.
I want to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
But
The social norm.
Right, it's a social norm. Nobody really sees what we do. Nobody goes out and sees how much we have to do. We have so many opportunities, and it's all on, are you seizing those opportunities? Are you looking for those opportunities? Or do you just want to kind of swim with the current and say, this is why it sucks?
Right. And I completely agree. I'm a very firm believer as equal opportunities, not equal results. And that comes down to, are you taking advantage of every opportunity that the community gives you, that a teacher gives you, that your peers give you, that your employer gives you? And if you're not, then the only finger you can point at is yourself, is because you're the reason you're not getting to where you want to be. It's nobody else. Because this person A and person B could have all the opportunities granted to them, all equal, but person A takes advantage to all of them and person B takes advantage of only 3 or 4, they're definitely going to be on different results, right? And so that's why I'm a firm believer of equal opportunities, not equal results. And a lot of people think that, well, we're granted the same opportunities. That means no matter how much work I put into it, I should end up in the same place as this other person. And it's not about that.
Yep.
It's all about what you put in, you get out. And that's what I am a firm believer in.
And to add to what you're talking about, what you were sharing earlier before the show went live, is what you've chosen and how you've chosen to be a young person and see your future with your upbringing that many young people in our community can relate to. Many.
Right.
Who are not choosing that because they're blaming their parents, or they're blaming addiction, or they're blaming whatever, and how that mindset, it's so interesting to me, because you can choose something else, which is what you're talking about, which you've done. So you can be very impactful, I feel like, in this community with young people,
right.
Based on your own experience and the relatability of that experience with them, and say, you know, it's not you.
Yeah. Like, that's my biggest advice to anybody, is that no matter where you came from, no matter what origin you had, it could be the best, it could be the worst. That origin doesn't define you. You define yourself, and the decisions that you make will define you forever. So it's really up to you on who you really want to be and what you want to be. It's not what happened in the past. It's not what's happening in the future. It's what's happening in the present and how you choose to deal with it. I definitely is a big thing. So you can't let your origin define you, and you can't let discrimination define you either, because people can be very mean, but you have to come to an understanding that at the end of the day, it's you. That person that said a mean thing isn't living with you. He or she isn't providing you with any support. It's you, and so you have to be willing to accept that and move forward. Like you said, perseverance.
Yeah. Not just for ourselves, but the generations behind us. You know, and that's kind of going back to the question of making change. That's how we make change.
Small waves turn into bigger waves. And then, speaking on the older generation, I know that there's a lot of people that grew up a certain way back, say, 50s and 60s during the civil rights movement and everything, and their parents were not for colored equality or anything. And it's not to say they aren't, but their parents have kind of instilled in them that this is not right because of this, and this is right because it's how it is. And I know that there are some people that struggle with that, like, this is, say, from personal experience, I'm biracial, Mexican-American. Some of my family members don't necessarily believe in interracial marriage, which I have to try and get through to them, that you do realize that if I have a chance of having an interracial marriage, and I had a big identity crisis for a while too.
Did you?
Because it's like, what girl do I go after? You know? So, and it's I don't think they mean to do it, but it's the mindset of how they've grown up, and it's harder to switch.
Right. It's like that schedule, you know, that we were talking about. Everybody's scared of change. So they've been programmed, and that's their schedule in their brain, you know, no intermarriage and everything like that. So then they're really hard on change, because they're it's not that they're scared, but the unknown, or just the unwillingness to change, it's just worked for them for so long, and they're okay with that. And the only thing you can provide to them is that this is what I have, and you have to bring love and acceptance to it is the big thing.
And I think, too, part of that for that generation is protecting those who come after them. They don't want you to suffer based on your risky choice,
Yep.
which it's ridiculous because you can't. Why should love have any shade, right? So that's interesting. I do think that a lot of people may think that they don't have problems until it comes into their family,
Yep.
which is interesting. And then you quickly find out that there are these deep-rooted ideas, and you don't maybe want to have to discuss that with your neighbor. It's more about their insecurity in what that is than anything you do. You know.
But I'll definitely agree with you with like the interracial marriage and stuff. And I notice that a lot of people point the finger at me, but I'm the offspring. I'm the kid. It wasn't my fault that my mother had a baby with a black man. It wasn't me. I had nothing to control with that. It was nothing. But I still feel like I get pinned with the blame because I am who I am. And I don't think that's fair at all for people to go through that, because it does challenge you. You have to be mentally strong when people do that, because it'll get your mind running on, oh my, is it really my fault, or what can I do to be different? And you have to find yourself again. So you do have to be really mentally strong when it comes to that kind of stuff, because people will point the finger at you and you don't control it at all.
You didn't choose.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's interesting too with you. You've talked about how you have chosen to define who you are and to be unique to you based on your experiences, which is very powerful. But I wonder if that makes people uncomfortable.
Right.
Because you're not matching up with what they think you should be friend group or clothing, or we've kind of covered some of that, but have you felt excluded based on those things?
Excluded somewhat, but I think a lot of it is a lot of people are intimidated by my confidence. The confidence that I bring, I'll admit, can be pretty strong sometimes. That's definitely truthful. And I try to be mindful of that, but I definitely try to be confident because people don't question a confident person.
Right.
Which helps people not discriminate against me, or helps people actually find me as a strong person. So I'm confident in my choices and my actions. And so, yeah, I was confident to wear whatever I wanted. I was confident to do what I wanted to do. And so, yeah, sometimes I felt excluded because people are like, kind of felt intimidated by the confidence that I bring to the table, but I never held it against them. I understood.
I wanted to, in closing, ask both of you if you could share with our older generation and with our younger generation a bit of your own wisdom going forward. You want to start, Jay?
Yeah. I know we've been talking about change a lot, and it's because change is hard to accept. Everybody likes to stay in their little nice home, stay comfortable. But I don't think, like what I was saying with accountability, if nobody tells you, you don't know. But it's hard to understand unless you go through it, about how hurtful and how harmful it can really be. And you don't even realize it, treating somebody differently. So if you can just take one extra step and think to yourself, is this how I would treat somebody else? And I know that sounds silly because everybody thinks, of course, I'm not racist. I treat him the same way. But do you really? Do you really?
That's good.
I know that there's a lot of minds that, like I said, think it's okay to say this or do this, or this is cool in their culture, So I'll say and bring it up, but there's no difference. We're all the same. Culturally, there may be a few different things, but why bring that up? Because LT, I don't know about you, but I've grown up 100% white and nothing else. But as soon as in 6th grade, I was told, you're brown. That changed my life. Because I never viewed myself that way. I always thought I was white. And then as soon as that seed was planted that I was different, I started viewing myself differently. I started acting differently. And it took me a long time to get back to the fact that I'm not different. On the outside, I look different, but I'm not any different or any less because of the color of my skin.
Yeah.
I completely agree with that. But the one thing I want to submit here before we get off is your approach. I know people watching this or people watching this later or just people in general in the United States and the world, we want to say what we want to say when we want to say it, but nobody really has a methodical way of thinking about things and thinking about, well, if I say it this way, I want this result, but it's going to take me this way, the complete opposite direction. So the thing I want to submit is your approach. A lot of people say it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And that's very true. I can say the same sentence 2 different ways and people take it completely different, one good and one bad. So I want to definitely submit that just take time to think about it, be a little bit more methodical about how you're, it doesn't even have to be about talking, but when you're expressing a difference, to definitely submit that, okay, I have a difference, but I'm not pushing yours aside or saying that mine's is prominent. I just want you to know that mine is here. So accountability, right? So that means ours can coincide together, our differences. I'm not pushing yours or making one more important than the other, but you just have to really think about how your approach is and how you approach other people's differences, I think is a big thing to take away from this.
I appreciate both of these wonderful young men for their time and investment in not only themselves but our community and all the things that they're busy being active in. I want to invite you back on August the 10th. We are going to have a panel that features the subject of the justice system and law enforcement. We have wonderful, exciting panelists for that panel as well. I hope that you'll come back and see us at that time, and thank you for joining again tonight.